Okay, the final ones that I'm going to demonstrate to you are probably the easiest ones to make, and these don't involve any cooking with the filling. So again, we're going to pop the pastry into the tin. Okay, again, just to remind you that I'm only doing 6 here for demonstration purposes. You should have 12 circles of pastry. I'm just going to pop those in, making sure that they're touching the bottom. And what we're going to do this time, because our filling doesn't need cooking, we're going to actually cook the pastry before we put the filling in. So if you have watched any of the other videos, you will see that we put the filling in before they go into the oven. This time round, because the filling's all cold, we're going to actually cook the pastry first. Now what I'm also going to do is it's the best way for you to be able to see this, I'm just going to put some small holes using a fork into the bottom of the pastry cases, just so that any steam which is produced will hopefully not cause the pastry cases to go bumpy in the middle, because if they do rise in the middle, it will actually take up some of the space which we would want for our filling. So just making sure, okay, that won't actually affect it when we put the filling into that later. So just making sure that we've put some holes in the pastry, and those now are going to go into the oven for about 10 minutes until they're golden brown. Now while we're waiting for the tarts to cook, we can start getting our filling prepared. So you can see here I've just melted some chocolate. I want some melted chocolate in my tart, so I've melted that ready. You could use ready-made custard. You could use jam again, you could use some fruit. If you're going to use fresh fruit, just make sure that it's not the type that's going to go brown, because you won't be eating all of these straight away. But you could, if you wanted to use something like apples, for example, use some canned apples instead. Okay, I'm also going to crush up my biscuits. Now, in the past, I've always said put them in a bag and bash them with a rolling pin. I've just actually realised that it's a lot easier to roll them with the rolling pin instead. So instead of bashing it, which actually isn't always that successful. Okay, I've just realised doing this demonstration I've had to go with rolling instead, and it is far more effective. So pop your biscuits into a bag if there's not a processor that you can use, and just roll those until they break up into smaller pieces. So again, I've got some Oreo biscuits in here, but you could use some digestive biscuits, you could use some Nice biscuits, some ginger biscuits, okay, lots of different things that you could use on the top. So once your tarts have browned off in the oven, again, we're just going to carefully lift those off. Now I wouldn't suggest filling those in the tray, because if you do get a mess on it, it's just going to make cleaning it more difficult, whereas as you can see, that's only going to need a quick wipe over there. So pop them onto a plate to fill them up. Okay, you could possibly put them straight into your container if you didn't want to have to lift them out again. So the next thing we're going to do, okay, is start to actually fill these up. Remembering, as I said to you, that you will actually have 12 of these. So I'm just going to put some of the melted chocolate carefully into the bottom of each of these. So as I said, you could use, like I've already explained to you, ready-made custard. You could fill them, as I said, with some fruit. So there's lots of different options you've got for filling these as well. Okay, I know the most popular choice is generally chocolate, but as I said, you could use a combination. So have some healthiness in there as well by having maybe something like some tinned mandarin oranges or some tinned apple slices, and then, as I said, popping some chocolate in there as well. Okay, and again, you could use some dried fruit. Dried fruit would be really nice, or fresh fruit like some blueberries, okay, would be really good in there. And then we're just simply going to top those off with our biscuits. So as I said, these are certainly the simplest ones to do when you've actually cooked up the pastry. Okay, so as I said, just putting a couple of teaspoons then of your crushed biscuits onto the top. And those are your Tart sioned with our biscuit top. Okay, as I said, you may be able to think of something else that you could crush up to go on the top of those. Maybe you could crush up something like some ready-made meringues. Okay, but as I said, probably one of the most popular ones is to crush up some biscuits. So those are your biscuit topped tart sioned.